there it goes. Okay, now we're recording at my end, and I'll share the screen again once I figure that out. Hey. I see. I have moved things around here. There it is, a green button. Share. Okay, we should be back in business.
Yep, that looks good.
All right, folks, so welcome aboard. Sean, have you anything else to say before I hit the ground running here?
Oh, I probably should say something or other. Yeah, I'll just say, well, first of all, thanks, Declan, so much for sharing your wisdom and expertise with us about game cameras. We've been, over at the Nature Center, we've been installing and playing with game cameras quite a bit over the winter, and had some great success and some great encounters. And ever since, folks have been asking us a lot about tips and tricks for how to set them and you know, how to go about you know, developing the practice of using game cam on your own. And so your invitation to offer this, Declan, came at the perfect time. So I really appreciate you working with the Nature Center. I want to thank everybody for supporting the Nature Center and for tuning into all of our webinars and other activities that we're doing, our classes. Though it has nothing to do with wildlife game cameras, I do want to put in a great plug for Declan's course that he's going to be teaching for us this summer on aquatic macroinvertebrates as part of our Biodiversity University series. So as you know, a good teacher is a good teacher regardless of what they're talking about. And so if you enjoyed Declan's chat tonight about wildlife game cams, join us for macroinvertebrates this summer. So with that, again, Declan, thanks, and I'll turn it back over to you.
All right then. So I just put a few useful links up here, and these things are going to recur periodically. So if you don't get them right now, they will show up again, and that'll be our cue to also look at any questions you may have typed in the group chat, and we'll see. We'll answer a selection of questions, and away we go. So first useful resource there is the eMammal site. I learned a lot from those folks. They provide a lot of free resources. If you want to share data with them, I believe there's a charge, you know, some kind of enrollment fee. I haven't done that, but it can be done. For teachers, the Alaska U.S. Fish and Wildlife has put together a sort of a critter cam activity guide, which can be useful. And if you Google around, there are many people doing similar guides, but I particularly like that one. I think iNaturalist is a great thing, and I encourage everyone to participate in that and record your data. You're observing animals, and in this case, mammals, which are harder to observe than most other things. So it would be very valuable to upload your data to iNaturalist. And I always forget my acknowledgements, so I put them on the first slide. So thanks to the Master Naturalist Program South Burlington Group for getting me going on some off-campus photography with the cameras. A whole bunch of St. Michael's College research students whose photographs I'll be sharing. And special thanks to North Branch for hosting the event tonight. Much appreciated. So let's see if we can get this show on the road here. And it doesn't want to advance slides. What else is new? Well, hope you like the first slide because it's the only one we're going to show. Let me see if I'm doing something wrong. Oh, there we go. So the title for hey, make the most of your camera. So all of these pictures on that screen are from very, very early on. That coyote is the first coyote we got on campus. I bought 2 cameras. I set them up. I let them run for 2 days, and that coyote was one of the first things we got in the snow. We got a ton of squirrels. Yeah, so very, very easy to get some really wonderful pictures of animals. This is where I do most of the work that I'm going to talk about tonight. So for those of you who know our local trails, on the top of this screen is the Woodside Natural Area around that little cluster of buildings above the river. And to the large loop with what looks like a cornfield on there is now a restoration area at St. Michael's College, and our campus is over to the left there. So this is, as you can see, completely ringed by urbanization, right across from the river from the airport, and lots and lots of wildlife nonetheless. So wherever you are, there's likely a spot where you can get some wildlife. That's the area we're talking about, where most of these pictures will be from. I'm going to give you the 2-slide history because I just can't resist. The early slides, early photography was string activated. You get a single shot. It involved lots of flammable materials, those big flares that they used to use for flash. So we've come a long way. Now you can get yourself a trail camera for under $100. By the time you add in the batteries and some other pieces, it's still a fairly inexpensive process to get yourself up and running. And you can get day and nighttime photographs on a $100 model. So body heat and motion triggered. The reason for both is that you can reduce the number of triggers you get from waving plants. That said, a plant that's in the sun and waves in front of your camera all day is warm and provides motion and will trigger your camera. So you got to be careful about that. You've got the capacity for thousands of photographs and a lot of video. And most cameras can do both. You just, set it up for one or the other. So at nighttime, you get an infrared flash. So you'll get these black and white images at nighttime. You can still identify most of the mammals we have in Vermont to species, with some exceptions, from that infrared flash. So you can do pretty well from a black and white image. So it's fairly straightforward to get up and running. I have to stop admitting people because every time I admit someone, I'll let you do that, Sean. I can no longer click forward.
Okay.
The daytime pictures are full color, high resolution. It seems every year the resolution gets better and better, but I haven't had an issue with resolution. I think it's pretty good. They're reasonably weatherproof, and what I mean by that is they can handle any weather in Vermont that I've encountered. Sometimes the batteries will fail if it gets very, very cold, and if they get submersed, they are done. So don't put it in a floodplain. SD cards, you can swap them in and out. Rechargeable batteries, you should be good to go. A regular question I get, frequent question, is can I set it up so that it sends me images or I can see them remotely? And if you're prepared to buy a camera that has its own cell phone account, you can do that. I haven't done it. It hasn't been necessary. I'm happy to just go and pick up the cards. So which one do you need? As you're looking at cameras, trigger time and recovery time are really important. Image resolution has improved to the point where it's no longer an issue. Depending on where you are putting the camera, you might like one that can have a security box. And of course, price is important as well. Read the reviews. There's lots and lots of reviews out there. I like this review in particular because I read it after I had bought all my cameras and it said my one was the best. So I've been using Browning cameras for the most part. I'll show you a couple of other cameras, but Brownings have been really fine for what I want to do. There's the Browning Strike Force, which is the one I primarily use. Really a great camera. I've heard good things about Moultrie. US Fish and or Vermont Fish and Wildlife uses them along with Browning for their work on martins, and they're quite good. But get a camera, try it out, see what happens. And it depends on what you want to do. If you just want to know who's knocking over your trash cans, then you can get by with a really inexpensive camera and you can quickly say, yep, that's the neighbor's dog. So I tried these multi-directional cameras and they were fine. The issue with them was they had a very slow response time. And you can see how long, you can see the length of this video and you can see how long it takes before it turns to me. Just watch it once more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, it's frozen. Of course it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds before it picked me up. So by that point, the animal that you've tried to find is probably gone. And you will get some nice pictures, but I set it up side by side with a regular Browning camera, and I got about 5 to 10 times more pictures on the Browning camera than I did on this multi-directional camera. So nice idea. I thought it was poorly executed. Not impressed. So this is what I use. You need the camera strap, which comes with the camera. You need batteries. They're AA batteries, and you can get rechargeables, which is what I use. There's lots of ways to do that. Hi, Catherine. Oh, yeah, please let Catherine in. She's one of my former students. So, hi, Catherine. How you doing? You need an SD card. About $140, maybe less. You can get them on eBay in the package, and they're often cheaper than you would get them elsewhere. You probably have warranty issues if you're going that direction, but I've never needed to use the warranty, so decide what you need. Optional things, garden fabric. Depends on the time of year. That's a tiny patch of garden fabric. I would go bigger. And the garden fabric is really important if you're going to work from now forward, because otherwise, not only does the vegetation crowd your camera, but the vegetation is going to wave in front of your camera, and there are issues there. So, security case, if you're going to put them somewhere public, put a scary little sign on there, you know, saying that it's tracked with a GPS or something, and you know, you'll come and get them if they steal it. I have had one stolen in 5 years. So, you know, depends on where you're putting them, really, if that's a concern. In your backyard, you're probably fine. I use something called a Python lock, which is that thick cable you see around the tree there in the upper picture, and it goes through the camera. Like, you would have to destroy the camera or the Python lock to get that camera off the tree. And for convenience, I also use a padlock, so I can just unlock the padlock, leave everything else attached, and you know, I can quickly switch out the cards without changing the camera angle. And once you start moving that Python lock, you're going to be changing the camera angle. And if you like the angle you had, you know, it's messy to fix it again. One trick I learned: if you have a smartphone, put it on selfie mode and slap it up on front of your camera, you know, right up against the face of the camera, and have a look at what the camera sees. It's pretty close to what the camera actually sees. I always forget to tell people that, but it's a good piece of advice. All right, where are you going to put it? Here's my backyard. We get lots of wildlife coming through. Here's a regular visitor. And my daughter set this up, so full credit to Lauren McCabe for all the pictures that are in my backyard. And we have an opossum on the other side of the house, comes in fairly regularly. And you can see it's a good Vermont opossum because his ears are frosted. That's how you can tell that an opossum has survived Vermont winter. If its ears are intact, it's probably a young one, but if its ears have frosty edges, it's a Vermont opossum that survived winter. Avoid the floods, as I mentioned earlier. This is one that was set up by a student whose name shall remain nameless. I moved that before the flood got any higher, and that's in the St. Michael's College natural area. So what have you got? It freaks people out if you point one at their house, even if it's vanishingly far away, and it's not going to take pictures of them, you know, through their windows. People just don't like it. Human trails, unless you have a specific reason for wanting to monitor a trail, I would avoid human trails, because you will get surprisingly a lot more pictures of people than mammals, even though it would seem, and this is at St. Mike's again, it would seem that it would be a natural place for animals to walk, and it is. You know, you just have to look through a whole lot of people pictures before you get your animals. There is a reason though. If you want to catch those poachers, that's what a really good value of your camera, some added value there. So we had 3 people. I ended up with 3 people charged with criminal possession of a deer, which I didn't even know was the name of a crime, but it is. So there you go. Here's a good location. This is an animal-made trail. You can see the vegetation beaten down, and there's a nice little tree you could strap a camera onto, and you would get regular passage, in this case of raccoons. So yeah, find trails, run the runs, and yeah, you can really get some good pictures. So I like to think of these as off-trail, animal-made paths. So you want to get off the trail, and it's also safer for your camera if it's off a trail. All right, look for footprints. So on the top right there, let's see, there's a couple of different species there. There's a raccoon for sure near the key, and in the left footprint is probably a mink. So get out after snowfall if you're doing it that time of year. You know, look for footprints. Put your camera up where the footprints were. Any other evidence? So there's some raccoon excrement near my glove on the left there, and there's a tree that was trimmed by a beaver. You can see it's an old one, so maybe that's not the best place. Maybe you want to find a fresh one. Up behind the barn, the red barn where the Snowflake Bentley Museum is active beavers right now. If you want beaver shots, that would certainly be the place to go. So this is my reminder to stop and ask Sean if we have any questions, and put those URLs up again for people who didn't get them.
Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, folks, if you'd like to throw a question in the chat bar, now's a good time to do that. One question from Dillian: How do you know it's an old beaver tree?
Just because the wood is older and soiled, so you can see that it's also cracked. So it's cracked, it's faded, It doesn't look like fresh wood. So there's a whole series of things that people do to age beavers, beaver trees and beaver dams. And there's a great book called Reading the Forested Landscape, which, God, I happen to have next to me. I don't know if you can see my face anymore, but this book details how to age beaver evidence. So Alicia Daniel recommended this one to me. She's in here somewhere. All right then, things I learned in the Master Naturalist program. I mentioned iNaturalist before. For another week or so, there is a backyard BioBlitz running. I set up a little video for some of my students. You can look at that if you want to, and it will give you some information on that. But the goal is to record as many Vermont organisms as we can in a month. So yeah, have a look at that. All right, so what have you got in your footprints here? We've got a cat and a dog in this one. And if you can draw an X through the footprint without cutting any of the pads, there's a good chance that it is a dog. And you can also see at the front of this footprint that there is a pair of nails sticking forward. You're not going to see that in the cat footprint. And that happens to be a coyote footprint, which we confirmed on the trail camera. And in the same photograph on the bottom, there is a bobcat picture. So next thing, and the bobcats tend to have a forward leading toe and nice roundish, very round pads on the toes. And you can see one toe is forward, slightly more forward of the other forward toe, if that makes sense. So there you go. Bobcat or house cat is mostly due to size, but the house cats tend to have a much rounder footprint. So the one on the right is a house cat, and the one on the left is slightly more elongated, and that's a bobcat. So if you're out there seeing footprints, and there's also something else I wanted to point out. Around the bobcat footprint, you can see where the hair has left an imprint in the snow. And Sue Morse from Keeping Track pointed this out to me one time. Sue Morse describes this as the halo, and I think that's a Sue Morse original. So yeah, if you see that, it's good evidence of a bobcat. All right then, other things about locations. We have found that fallen logs are just fantastic. They are natural bridges across something. So this happens to be a pair of logs that are crossing a wetland in Centennial Woods in South Burlington. And interesting thing about the one facing away from the camera, you can see that there are small trees growing out of it. And that's what's called a nurse log. And those are trees that have seeded on top of the log and grown into it. And they're very likely trees that may not have survived in the wetland soil to begin with. But now they're there and they're perched on top of this log, and the roots eventually will grow over it. But the vegetation is flattened, the bridge is there, things will walk on it. And I have taken to putting cameras directly on top of logs like that. You can see this one, it's got, you know, garden fabric all around it here to really give myself a better chance of it. This is early in the season, but the vegetation will grow all around here and animals will be coming through, and you'll get beautiful face-to-face pictures as they walk right up to the camera. You know, so strap it right onto the log. You get it's a wonderful outcome if you've got a place to put it. Here's one of my favorites. This is I believe it's one of the kittens that were born on campus last year, born close to campus. We had one photograph of 3 bobcats in a single picture, and the only reason for that is if it's a mom traveling with kittens. So down logs are, you know, among my favorite locations. And this is in Essex, part of St. Mike's campus. Watch the tail right there, marking territory right there. They lift their tail and they mark their territories. And then of course he sat down right off the edge of the camera. So can't tell a bobcat where to sit necessarily. All right, data. I have to show you some data. You know, the students have gotten lots of data. So Risa and Lauren, 2 former students of St. Mike's, actually both graduated Sunday. Congratulations to both. And you can see the data. So these are control sites with no logs. These are sites with logs, and you can see you've gone from, you know, 4 or 5 observations up to, you know, 9 or 10 observations. And, you know, the obvious thing is, well, logs don't fall down at random. And if you're a scientist, you're thinking, well, hang on a second. You know, the places with the logs are older forests, and therefore you got more animals. So I had the students go back, and Lauren and Risa went back, and they looked at these same photographs, but they looked to the side. And sure enough, most of the animals in these pictures were actually on the logs. So it's pretty good evidence that logs are actively useful, and that's my sales pitch for logs. Find some fallen logs. You'll get lots of cool pictures. There's a nice pileated woodpecker. And back when we were growing corn at St. Mike's, the squirrels would take corn cobs and come over to the logs and sit in the log with a little picnic basket, picnic bench, and eat them. So other places, compost piles. About eating your compost, here's a way to find out. And Olivia and Skylar, who graduated the year before, have this data set, and you can see these were trails approaching the St. Michael's College open compost pit. It's a large pile of compost or cafeteria food in there, and you get a lot more observations compared to our control cameras. So if you've got a carcass that you happen to find, put a camera on it. This is Brian Swisher's video. Watch the video, and you're going to see a couple of flashes because he had a still camera operating in the same patch of woods. Here it goes. Oh, no, it doesn't. Let's go back and try one last time here. Oh, there we go. There's a fisher. Nice big tail. So that big fluffy tail, very distinctive compared to a mink, and larger. Of course, it's hard to gauge size from a trail camera. Should you bait them or not bait them? I don't bait them because that would involve paperwork, to be perfectly frank. I'm a professor, I'm a teacher. 25% of my time is devoted to research. I don't want to spend any of that time doing permits and animal care forms and all that stuff. So I don't bait anything. So this is actually my daughter's science fair project, and she did bait them, and it was very effective. If you're going to do it, you'll certainly get things coming in that are very specific, like squirrels like peanut butter. And, she got lots of great pictures. So I don't do it, but you can. You could probably try catnip. You might have some success. I don't know. So yeah, here's some of the pictures Lauren got. She got lots of bunnies. She got our neighborhood dog came through, and a lot of birds. And the rabbits were so excited that they ate the sticks that she had used. So yeah, go Lauren. She got herself a nice science fair prize out of it. Away we go. It's a good thing for kids. It's really exciting because you're not going to see as many things walking in the woods, but you really will with a trail camera. All right. Knee high is best. Animals generally don't come in higher than that. Certainly deer, if you're really scouting for deer, then by all means stick it up in a tree at the height of a tree stand, so you've got the same view that you would have. But honestly, if you're looking for anything else, knee high is really great, and you'll get great deer pictures also. Other reason to put it higher is for security reasons, but your photography success drops dramatically the higher you put it. You get lots of far off images. So knee high is good because most mammals walk on the ground, with some exceptions. All right, here is the exception in Vermont. We have two species of flying squirrel. We've got the northern species and the southern species. They do sometimes come to ground. So we've got a handful of pictures of flying squirrels. You can see the flap there on the side, and they've got a huge big eye. They're very, very nocturnal. Most people don't even know we have flying squirrels. Turns out we got two of them. Which one did we get? This is what you have to distinguish. And good luck to you telling that apart on a trail camera picture. I'm going to go with it was either northern or southern, and was very happy to get a picture. So there we go. All right, there's another flying squirrel coming down a branch here. You can see that flap again and the big eyes. So they're beautiful little animals. I have seen them in person once, working with a mammologist in Pennsylvania, and he would trap them live and then release them, and it was so cool. He'd release them onto a bare tree, no branches, and we'd all gather around. The animal would go to the top and then just take off. And it's like Buzz Lightyear. It's not really flying, it's falling with style, So adjust your camera angle, and you want your camera parallel to the ground. If the ground has a slope, you should have your camera having a slope, right? So there's the ground slope, there's the camera angle. It's better to have it a little bit too high than a little bit too low. What you miss by having it a little bit too, I said that wrong. You want to have it a little bit too low, I apologize. What you miss by having it a little bit too low is a lot of sky. And like I said, the animals are coming at ground level, so fine, miss the sky. You might cut off the head of the occasional deer in your picture, but you'll get lots of good pictures. Too high is very, very bad. You get lots of ears and things, and who knows what you saw. So there's a nice picture from one that was put too high. And you can see at the very bottom of the picture, we have a bunny. And that is all we saw, the bunny. So wedge sticks in there. People, go to the trouble of cutting wedges and doing all sorts of things. I think it's just easier to scramble around, find a few sticks and jam them on in there and see what you get. So use the strap for tightening. Don't use the Python lock for tightening and adjusting the angle. If you're using a Python lock, a couple of things happen. You put it out in warm weather, and when you're trying to recover it, it gets cold, your lock will shrink. You put it out early in the season and you put it really tight on a tree, the tree will grow. And 3 months later, when you're recovering it, as I often do, I often leave them out for 3 months, you'll have a really hard time getting that lock off. So leave your Python lock plenty loose so you can get a few fingers in behind it and use the strap for adjusting. So what else? Vegetation. Clear your vegetation, do some trimming, do some pruning, whatever it takes to get that vegetation out of your way. It will grow back if you prune it. Weed barrier is good. This is what you're trying to avoid. Picture after picture like that. Hang your camera straight. This is not sloping ground. Excuse me. So there's a coyote who is literally walking on flat ground. There's a fisher on the same camera. Excuse me. All right. What else have I got? Try to frame your pictures. Here is a picture in an open field, and you may or may not be able to see this. It depends on your screen. So right off the bat, you can see that there is a deer up front. Okay. But it's a deer. It's got antlers. What else could it be, right? But you're not going to get a good picture. You'll get more pictures, but they'll be not close up and hard to ID. They're fine for counting, deer herds and things like that. Great purpose is to put it on your field, if that's what you're interested in, and see how many deer are going through. But if you put them on tight corners, like this camera is backed up against a canoe, and you get everything up close. Downside is you get fewer photos, but all of them are close up, and identification is going to be great. So I try to find natural barriers, find situations where the camera is going to get pictures that are close. And did anyone notice the coyote in the deer shot? I don't know how good your screen resolution is, but right there's a coyote, which I can't see on my screen right now. Some of you may be able to see it. On the right of that same picture, there's a pair of eyes right there. Someone's looking at us, who knows, probably another deer. Anyway, laws. I'm unaware of any Vermont-specific laws. Vermont has very generous rules as far as walking on land. If it is not posted against trespassing, I'll let you look up the laws yourself. I'm not aware of any trail camera specific laws. A landowner can remove your camera if they don't like it there. So, so if you're working with a landowner, get permission, of course. I was made aware of one site that I was interested in, and I was told that cameras had disappeared from it. So I just thought, okay, I'm working somewhere else. So, but Nevada has laws, and there's laws in Montana, there's laws in Maine. There are actually trail camera laws in different places. We just don't have any so far. Don't lose your cameras. All the trees look the same. You'll think, oh, I'll remember that tree. No, you won't. 6 months later, 3 months later, a month later, half an hour later. So I use a GPS. If you have a smartphone, there's a free app you can get. I'm not getting commission. You can get yourself Gaia GPS or some other app where you can mark waypoints. And it'll get you, within about 30 feet of your camera. And if you get within 30 feet, I've never actually lost one when I had a GPS point on it. So, I have the same number of cameras I started with. Here's an example of how we set one up. And here you put it all in Google Maps. If you want to share it with someone you're working with, you can do that. So there's one of our studies and all the camera locations that we used. That was a fun study. This is again in our natural area. So be careful out there. If you're out there during hunting season, make sure you have some bright colors. Get out there with friends, family, kids, whoever, and have a good time. I always enjoy doing this kind of work. So heck, they pay me for it too. It could be worse, couldn't it? This is with the Vermont Naturalist Group and with some St. Mike students, setting up on the Underwood property that belongs to South Burlington City. So we got some fun results down there. So did any questions come in on the chat line, Sean?
I have a few while we're waiting for other folks to throw some questions in. I remember listening to Sophie Mazuita talk about her thoughts on game cameras, and she commented that every single game camera she's ever put up in the Burlington area had a house cat on it eventually. And I'm wondering if you have encountered the same thing over in your area.
Yeah, I got house cats in the Underwood property for sure. There was one house cat that would come regularly by one of the cameras in particular. Now we put in 16 cameras in that area. 2 cameras got house cats. But we went deep into the woods as well. And, you know, when you got away from the houses, the house cats went away. We've been doing it for 4 or 5 years at St. Mike's. I've gotten one house cat that has ventured in, but the area is full of coyotes, and we also have bobcats. So not the healthiest place for a house cat to go necessarily. So, but if you do it in the Burlington area, you do it around homes, you're likely to get house cats, you're likely to get domestic dogs. And it's fun to know what they're doing too. When I put them in my own backyard, I definitely get 3 different individual cats that I can recognize, and 2 neighborhood dogs that periodically get loose. Although the one neighbor says his dog is never out, but I've got the pictures and I don't care. So anyway.
Brian's asking if you can remind us how to access the trail by St. Michael's.
You can access the trail by St. Michael's. The easiest way is probably to park at the Woodside Natural Area, walk back up the hill and make a left through the chain link fence. There's a gate there and there's a kiosk. If you park near the Merle Cemetery, which is in the jug handle turn across from St. Mike's, and people, you know, pull over on the verge there and they walk down from there. We don't want people driving down past that gate. We'd like you to walk down. It's good exercise, you know, but it's a 1.3 mile trail from one end to the other, and there are other places off trail you could also go. So yeah, everyone's welcome.
And then I have another question. So I'm wondering about all these different camera brands will have an advertised range at which the trigger will work reasonably effectively. And I'm wondering, in your experience, how far is too far to really expect something on the camera? Like, is that trigger, does the animal need to really come within 10 feet, 20 feet, 50 feet to really get reliable results?
Well, you saw that deer in the field. I wouldn't like to estimate the distance, but it was certainly more than 100 feet, I would say. So the downside with that kind of a trigger is you get a lot of small pictures. So the advantage of a long trigger distance is you get more pictures. The disadvantage is who the heck knows what that little mouse was, you know, 100 feet away. So the way I set my cameras up in terms of having them angled closer to the ground and facing barriers of some kind, I'm always getting animals that are in close to the camera. So I think you'll have better results, not so much with a shorter trigger distance, but with carefully placing the camera, if that makes sense. You don't,
yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I don't think you want it facing a big open field. All right.
One more question, if you want.
Yeah.
Allison's asking, her game camera captures a lot of moving branches on windy days, and is there any way to position or adjust the camera to minimize getting branches moving in the wind?
Yeah, definitely. You know, trimming the vegetation helps if that's an option. If it's on your own property, you know, the weed barrier does help with that also. But without a weed barrier and without trimming, you'll get thousands of pictures of moving vegetation. So I found that the weed barrier needs to be, you know, up to the bottom of the camera and then out about 12 feet. And you're still going to get some triggering, but not as much as you would. So, and the other thing, of course, is wintertime. You get a lot less triggering like that in wintertime. I still prune back twigs and dead vegetation, but there's a lot less, it's a lot smaller issue in wintertime. And you get some cool pictures of those animals on snow. So yeah, lots of options. Thanks for the question. Should we wander on?
Onward.
Okay. So question I often get is, do the animals notice the cameras? And there are people who claim that, I don't know how they claim this, but they claim that the animals aren't aware of the cameras. And, you know, I think they're wrong. So the cameras do 2 things that can trigger an animal. They make a very, very subtle noise, which I can't hear. But I'm 54, and you know, I did things, too many rock concerts when I was younger. So the chances of me hearing it are utterly remote. The other thing it does is it is giving off a faintly visible flash, and it's certainly giving off infrared. They come in two categories: node low and load low. The load low cameras I can see if I walk in the woods at night time, because I can see that little subtle glow. If I can see them, certainly a bobcat can see them, and you can see that bobcat reacting to the camera. I felt particularly bad for this. You can see this one. This one actually had a good time. That glow in the background is one of our trail markers at St. Mike's. But this cat clearly notices the camera and comes right up for a close encounter. So there you go, cats on campus. I feel bad for this fella. The first flash seemed to spook him, and this is down on the Underwood property in South Burlington with that Master Naturalist program, and he is just gone. He is out of there. That's the last we saw him. That camera I mentioned earlier, the directional, multi-directional camera, does produce wonderful pictures when it produces pictures. I just wanted to show you this little video we got of the deer reacting to the camera. You can see the one deer is just ignoring it. Think of this as my Narnia shot here. And then the other deer loves the camera. And watch the background shaking as the deer nudges the camera. And the other disadvantage of this multi-directional camera is there's no way to lock it down if you want to lock it. So, but they do produce some beautiful pictures and videos. So there you go. All right. Some animals habituate to the cameras. So these are some daytime pictures of coyotes here. And these were coyotes that showed up starting in sort of June and July in 2017. And prior to this, most of the coyotes had been very shy of the cameras. And then these four showed up. And in my perception, they're young of the year. They moved together as a group. They all looked, you know, there's no scars on their ears. A lot of them have little nicks out of their ears from fights and thorns and things. So to me, they looked like new coyotes. But they would show up and hang around by the camera for long periods of time sometimes. And you get lots and lots of pictures of them. In this case, 3 minutes of pictures, 110 photos later, and off they went. That's the last picture, and they're gone. And this is my favorite sequence here. I want to look at two things here. The temperature stamp is saying 16 degrees Celsius at the starting point, and then the time stamp is 12:31 a.m. So here we go. You get lots of close-ups of different body parts. And eventually we figured out that they were wrestling the camera strap. Now we're up to 17 degrees Celsius. There's some huffing and puffing going on. And they keep pulling, and you know, away he goes. So I had a lot of fun with this. 18 degrees, we're still warming up. And then his buddy came and joined them. And the two of them were pulling and not sure what was going on. They were actually removing the weed fabric. So we get lots of pictures of them collaborating on putting up the weed fabric. We're up to 21 degrees Celsius now, we're still going. And as you know, our local coyotes have some wolf DNA. So this is genuine huffing and puffing from our local wolf hybrids. And 22 degrees, still moving. And they park for a while, just kind of hang out, sit on the fabric. And it finally warmed up to 23, and then it starts to cool off again as they take off. And the next morning, Alyssa came and got the cameras. And here's the summary: 11 minutes, 383 pictures, a 6-degree temperature rise. 4 of our camera straps were pruned that year by coyotes. They cut the straps right off them. 6 of the weed fabrics were pulled up, and 2 of them were never seen since. So yes, the animals noticed the cameras. We okay for questions, Sean? Keep moving?
Yeah, we can keep going.
All right. So a common question is, how big is that animal? Well, someone will look over my shoulder when I'm going through the pictures and say, wow, that's a huge raccoon. And this is a huge dog. There's no doubt about it. But it really depends on proximity to the camera. There's the same dog in the way back. He looks a little smaller, you know? So unless you are going to go out there and calibrate using sticks, you know, using meter sticks or something, yardsticks at several distances, which I suspect you could do, it's really hard to say if one animal is bigger than another. I mean, what do you think? That, you know, a lot of people look at this and they think that it's a bear or something huge. Turns out it's a very fluffy bobcat. You know, and it's really not that big, but some fun pictures of it. Some crazy things I've seen: try not to put your camera upside down, so that the instead of the security case acting as a weather shield, it acts as a funnel to pour water in the bottom of your camera. If you're going to do pictures on a college campus, you're going to have people pranking you. So there's somebody who wanted to show us a deer. This is a picture on iNaturalist, a guy named David Baker put up. And at first I thought, oh, it's just the light shining on a beautiful coyote. And, you know, but then I emailed the students and I said, hey, have we got any pictures of kind of blonde looking coyotes? In the and we have cameras from the same area. And sure enough, there's this picture which looks like it is definitely not a typical color coyote. And then there's this one. We're unsure on this one. It does look very much like a coyote. So again, this is down there. This is, I shouldn't mention the area, I guess, in case in case somebody decides they want to get a blonde coyote. But yeah, it looks like we do have some interesting color morphs in Vermont. Farther south, there are black coyotes. There's a coyote population up in Nova Scotia, I believe, that has genes from domestic dogs, and they've actually got the golden retriever gene in their coat color. So fun stuff. Possums, opossums. I get lots of opossums. You know, those frosted ears I mentioned earlier. This one I put on here just to show you. It's got a little some jewelry going here. This is a radio collar put on the coyote by U.S. Department of Agriculture as part of the rabies studies, and they released some on our campus. They trapped them and released them at the same location. Apparently the opossums get the rabies bait, and since opossums don't get rabies, it's a waste of the bait. So we're trying to figure out more about opossum habits by looking at them at St. Mike's. But here's the real star of the show here. Sometimes you get lucky and get a really cool observation. So this is an opossum, and this is a coyote. And I had always read as a child back in Ireland that opossums, whatever the heck they might be, would fall over dead if a predator came by, and they would come back to life again. And they do, they play dead. I just never thought I'd catch it on picture. So watch the opossum. There he is, cowering a little bit, and there he is falling over dead. And then he gets nudged and by the coyote. The coyote steps over him, you know, has a look at the camera, goes back for another sniff, and then takes off. And now look at the camera time. It is 3:46 a.m. and we have now our opossum in lump mode. And the next picture is at 3:50, so 4 minutes, and the opossum goes into Lazarus mode, comes back from the dead, and takes off. So you know, kind of a fun thing you get. If you put out enough cameras, you're going to get cool things like this once in a while. This is what we call the festive raccoon drop. This is part of the Master Naturalist program. This is in Centennial Woods, and the picture is not great. And for some of your screens, it may be even worse. But trust me, that's a raccoon. There's a stripy tail. There's his eye, and he's hanging on this branch here, and there's water underneath. And if you just watch the sequence, he kind of waves over him back a couple of times and then disappears. So I assume he went in the drink, and raccoons being what they are, I assume he successfully came out the other end, but who knows, who knows? So I thought I'd spend a little bit of time distinguishing the three dogs that we get in Vermont. So you're going to get them in black and white pictures, and it's nice to be able to tell them apart. So we got three wild dog species, right? So this is the gray fox, and if you get it in daytime, you'll get wonderful pictures of this large tail with a big black stripe down the back, right? And people describe the face as cat-like in some ways, but whether you call it cat-like or not, the face is very distinctive. So that's the gray fox. This is the red fox, and Eric and Mitchell shared this picture. Whenever I use someone else's picture, I try to give credit. And these things come from the Colorado Corridors Project. You can download these pictures and use them. So the distinguishing things about the red fox, they tend to have black socks and a white tail tip. Okay, and then the coyotes are the last one here, the last wild dog we have. They tend to have a black tail tip, a much shorter proportionally tail. So the proportional length is much less than either of the foxes, and they tend not to have a whole lot of color distinction along the body, and they don't have socks that are a distinctive color. So you can generally tell these three apart fairly readily. So there you go. There's the gray fox with that cat-like face and the black tail tip, and that is down at the Underwood property. And this is the camera we got a lot of cats on. And this is the red fox, black socks, right? And long tail. And the white tail tip you can't see in this picture, but in the second picture of the same animal, we were able to see it. And then this is our coyote, right? So they have that broader jaw You know, it's a much broader face than either of the other two, and the tail is proportionally shorter. So there you go. All right, we do get some color variation, and this is a one from iNaturalist. This is what they call a cross fox, and the cross fox is actually, the species is red fox, but periodically you get this color morph, which is pretty cool. I've never gotten one on camera, but Heidi Bronner did, and I thank her for her picture. All right, what have I got going here? Sometimes you get mice. If you really want to get mice, if you're interested in rodents, you can set these things up where there's a fallen tree with a lot of vegetation, a lot of horizontal branches, and they will run over and back of the branches, which is kind of cool. So we do get mice. We have never gotten a single rat on any of our pictures. And this is despite the fact that we've set cameras up next to an open compost pit fed by an entire cafeteria for, you know, a population of 2,000. No rats. And I attribute that to a very healthy predator population. So I think we need foxes, we need coyotes, we need things eating rats, unless you're fond of rats, which personally I'm not the largest fan, let's just say that. But anyway, the mouse is there to remind me to say that, and also to point out that we do pick up tiny things on the camera, and they are triggered by mice. Here, have a look at this fella. So first we start off with the hawk, who then takes off, and then this is all stills put together. A raven shows up. Have a look at the wing. The wing is dragging a little bit, so that's not because of the interaction that's about to happen. Wanders around the log for a while, and then keep watching. There you go. The red tail comes back, almost gets a raven for lunch, and the raven comes back later, none the worse for wear apparently. And then it goes back, loops back to the beginning again. So this is put together with stills. I have a 14-year-old daughter who's good at telling me how to do these kinds of things. Here's another one that we were able to catch on camera. Like I said, you put out 20 cameras, you know, one camera got this one time. You can't guarantee that you're going to get, you know, two deers shoving each other around, but you know, it happens. They do shove each other around, and sometimes you're lucky enough to have a camera at the right place at the right time. This is one I wish I had it in video, but even without the video, I think you get the idea. And the big one seems to win, and he's coming back across and marks his territory a little bit there, and the other one comes back for another go and gets sent off rapidly once again. So there you go. I think the big one won. Who knows? And here's another kind of a cool story. This was only the second bobcat we ever photographed, so we were super excited to see a bobcat. So what I want you to see is that the pictures are nice and clear here. Everything is crisp, and then the coyote sidles up to the camera a little bit, and then you get to see a close-up of the coyote, of the bobcat's hindquarters, and everything after that is quite fuzzy. So you probably agree what happened here is the bobcat marked our camera as part of his or her territory. They shoot straight back when they mark territories. Alyssa was a student at the time. She saw the camera kind of smudgy the next day, and she cleaned it with the corner of her t-shirt and moved on. And 2 weeks later, she looked at the SD card and discovered what she had wiped off with her shirt. But you know, she's a good field biologist. It didn't even faze her. So away goes our bobcat. This is a nice video by Janet Passartero, whose name I just probably have butchered. But anyway, it's a good video, and I don't have a comparable one, so I thought I'd share hers. So this is scent marking. And you saw it on our earlier video in Essex of the tail going up. So sometimes they get more aggressively marking. They mark with their paws. They mark at land that they've got. It's not urination, it's different. And they will also mark by urinating. So they have lots of ways of marking and leave signposts for the other bobcats. So I'm sure it sends an important message. I don't speak bobcat, not sure what the message is, but you get the idea. Set them up on video once in a while. It's worth doing. There you go. Hopefully that's not too loud for you. And defecation is another way to mark. There you go. Everyone needed to see that. The end result, from my point of view, as an educator and a professor, is we like to get students involved in research. And so here's Risa showing her poster at a conference, and there's Alyssa and Jade showing theirs. Jade, I believe, works for either U.S. Fish and Wildlife or Vermont Fish and Wildlife. She's moved on, graduated, and done other things. She worked for UVM for a while too. But they take their experience and they do other things. And all three of these folks are still at the college, and this was their sophomore year. They're going to get the band back together, they tell me, in the fall to do another research project. So we have a good time when we go off and present our data. Any questions ruminating there, Sean, or we keep moving?
How do you decide between, this is from Jerry, how do you decide between setting your camera on still or setting it on video? And if you do video, how long do you usually set the clip to run for?
I have discovered that setting the clip to about 10 seconds suits my purpose. That's the first answer. The reason is usually the animal is gone by the end of 10 seconds. It's unusual for an animal to stay much longer. So you end up, if you do 20-minute clips, 20-second clips, you end up with, you know, half of the clip usually being empty, and you use up your space faster. So that's based on my experience. You know, there have been times when I was glad it was on 20 because I got some kind of a fun interaction. Most of the time I have them on stills because my purpose is generally to generate data. And, you know, if you wanted to put them on iNaturalist, for example, they're not set up for video. You'd have to do a screenshot and it'll be a little bit grainy. So yeah, you know, stills are more valuable for me, but I'm interested in data. I'm a data hog. I want numbers, and I can get a lot more numbers. I can leave a camera running for 3 months, you know, and it won't be full. So with video, you'll need a larger SD card, and SD cards have gotten cheaper. Get a big one, and you can get some cool video. So it depends on what you want to do. Sometimes the students will put together a whole bunch of clips. They're very good at video editing. I find it to be an inefficient process for me. I'm not a good video editor. So I encourage my students to do that. But yeah, I rarely use video. So it depends on what you really want. It depends on your goal. Go back and forth and try it out and see what you like best. So all I have left really is I've covered all the techniques I want to cover. Any other questions before I move on?
No, we can keep going.
So I'm going to just show you cool pictures. And, you know, how are we? Let's see how we are on time here. It's, yeah, we got 7 minutes at the most here. So let's click through, and, you know, you get lots and lots of fuzzy images, but then you get something like this and you think, oh, just great, you know, love that. Sometimes you get, you know, what looks like attitude. Who knows? You get things that are, these animals are triggered by the camera and they look right at the camera. So you get these fun shots, you know, or you get them grooming themselves, or you get, you know, you just get some nice shots. Lots of raccoons at nighttime. Lots of coyotes looking right at the camera. You know, they clearly are aware that the camera's there. Sometimes you get these nice portraits that, you know, they're just fun. You can see that this gray fox is intently hunting for something. It's very much focused on the ground. It's looking for something there. Who knows what? Maybe it got it, maybe it didn't. Sometimes you get a fisher looking by the camera. On the scale of things, fishers and bobcats are rare in my images. So I'm always excited when I see one of those. Mink, I get excited about mink too. My family in Ireland, you know, just hate mink because mink are invasive over there. They all escaped out of fur farms and not native, and they kill all sorts of things. So they can't understand it when I get excited and I put a mink photograph up on Facebook. Sometimes you get some nice birds that perch on logs. Once again, logs are great. You'll sometimes get birds of prey coming down and pulling things apart on a log, which is kind of fun. You get a whole series of really good, you know, nice pictures. Not sure what this raven was eating, but it's eating something. Or is it a crow? Is that an American crow or a raven? I can't tell. Anyway, sometimes you get the turkeys strutting their stuff. We had a huge family of turkeys 4 years ago on campus, and we would get numbers like 20, 22 passing the camera at one time. These three, I just like the way that they lined up along the edge there, among the Dutchman's britches. So, you know, again, you can't plan any of these things. You just put the camera out and see what you get, and you keep your favorites, and the others are just data. But even if, for my purposes, even if they're fuzzy pictures, if I can identify the animals, I've still got the data. Sometimes you get a coyote in daytime. This one ended up, we blew it up and we have it like framed on the wall. So all of the admissions tours who pass by our department at St. Mike's get to see this coyote up close and personal. Sometimes you get a deer, you know, and different lighting and different times a day you get different image qualities, and you know there's some beauty to it. Sometimes you get an action shot. You know, you can see the velvet coming on this little guy. Sometimes you see, you know, tool use and things that you weren't anticipating. There's another reason to put things on a log. And there's our bunny that spent many hours in front of the camera staring at it. And sometimes you just get a beautiful bobcat. And I think the rest of what I have are bobcats because they're my favorite. This bobcat came by and looked right at the camera and took off. This one is one where we had the camera strapped to a log, so you get that nice close face picture as it comes in. And the next picture after that is likely to be a fuzzy picture of its legs passing over the camera. You know, so we do have a good time. We get to see some nice pictures, get some data. Students get some good field biology experience. So this is the one I mentioned. These are 3 bobcats in a single frame, a tall one, and then two kittens. So they showed up on several cameras in last summer. So I'm motivated to get some more cameras out of that same location this summer. There's a potential project coming for cameras. I'm unsure if it's going forward, but if it doesn't, then I'll be putting all the cameras back at St. Mike's or somewhere else. So yeah, something to think about. And there's one of the kittens posing for the camera, of course, right on the weed fabric. So I encourage people to put their images on iNaturalist, and I believe that cat walking away is my last slide. Yeah. So I'm going to take it off screen share and talk to folks if you have any questions. And if you don't, that's fine too. So it looks like we got a crowd in. Any more come up on the feed, Sean?
Well, I got plenty while waiting for some other ones to come in, but I'm wondering the effectiveness rate of a camera's trigger. Like if you were to put 2 cameras in the same place, maybe you've done this, put 2 cameras in the same place facing the same area, how often does one camera miss the animal that it should have caught and the other camera picks up?
We have done that. We did side-by-side video and stills one time, and it's frequent. So for certain, the cameras are missing animals. For certain, there are times when they are not triggered when they should have been triggered, or in my perception, should have been triggered. And for certain, there are triggers that the animal shows up on one camera, and in the same time frame, is missing from the second camera, even though it got triggered. So all possibilities exist.
And you had a photo of a coyote running away from the camera. I just wanted to point out some corroborating anecdotes. Our personal game camera at our house, as well as the Nature Center's game camera this winter, both got caught coyotes on them. And immediately, as soon as they saw the low glow, they booked it and were out of there. And we didn't catch them again on either camera for the rest of the winter.
Yeah, and they certainly do habituate too, because my first winter with the cameras was, you know, I got some coyotes, but I wasn't terribly successful. But after those 4 coyotes were, in my perception, born on campus, they showed up on camera after camera after camera all winter. They weren't bothered in the least. So yeah. So I see a picture coming in there. Browning Force Trail cameras. Which trail camera produces the highest quality? So the gold standard that people used for years was the Reconyx camera, and they are hellaciously expensive. I have one. We just got one, but I'm working from course budgets at a small college. So for the money, there was no difference in image quality, in my opinion. The Browning cameras were fine. We didn't try any cheaper cameras. So, you know, I don't have it's best to read the reviews. I don't have a good sense for a comparison because I haven't really done the comparisons other than that one multi-directional camera, which was a mistake, mostly because of trigger time. So yeah, get the highest resolution you can afford if you're trying to do something. If you're trying to make posters or trying to have really nice images, go for higher resolution. But the Browning cameras have been fine for my purposes.
At the Nature Center, we have 3 Browning Strike Force Pro X, something like that. They're low glow cameras. They're about $120 a piece, 120, $140 a piece. And we've had really great success with them.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, we've got 30 Browning cameras. And it might sound like a crazy number, but when you start doing student projects, you want replication. You're trying to do science. So, you know, we don't just put a camera on a log. We put 10 cameras on 10 logs and 10 cameras at control sites that don't have logs. So our main reason for having so many cameras is for replication so the students can actually do science. So I should point out, if there are teachers out there, a camera or two in your playground, you know, especially in Vermont schools, you're going to get some cool things that the students will not have seen. Even you know, country Vermont kids who grew up on a farm haven't seen most of the mammals, just because the mammals are so secretive. You know, how many people have actually seen a live gray fox? I'm in the woods a lot. I've seen one, you know. So I've never seen a live bobcat. So yeah, they're worth putting up. Science fair, even if you've got one camera, you can start doing replications by moving the camera and deploying it for multiple nights, comparable sites. You can do all sorts of cool science fair projects out of it. My daughter had a really good experience doing it. So that's a good idea with them. Other questions coming along here? Oh, here we go. Student research projects. Okay, so I mentioned the log comparison. So the question was, you know, what student research projects have we done? Log comparison was the big one with the most interesting result. We did a comparison between compost and non-compost sites. We've done forested area compared to open field. You know, those types of binary questions where you're not baiting the cameras, but you can set them up in as groups, as replicated groups, randomly placed. We had a student who tried to study the railway line as a conduit for mammals. Turns out it's a really good conduit for trains. Didn't get very many mammals, but now we know. We've done work on the underpasses in South Burlington, putting cameras on opposite sides of the same underpass and carefully setting the timing so that you know what time the animal went in and what time it came out the other end. We've gotten really fascinating results with those. So, you know, there's all kinds of things you can do. Sometimes it's, you know, science can be as simple as, I want to know what lives here, or it can be as complicated as setting up a replicated experiment and doing statistics on it. You know, so those are some examples of things we have done. We've stopped short of manipulations for paperwork reasons, but there's plenty of questions we can ask without that. We also have increasingly had people ask us to put the cameras in places. So, you know, the South Burlington is one example. There's somebody up on Grand Isle, I believe, wants to have sites monitored. There's discussion about monitoring intervale sites, and there's discussions about covering underpasses. So, you know, St. Mike's likes to do service for people off campus. And so I think moving forward, we've kind of exhausted my current stash of ideas for on campus. So we're now starting to think about monitoring places for other people. Yeah, and it's kind of nice because we can show up with 20 cameras and set them up. And the way it works in my little world is we'll set them up before Thanksgiving and then walk away. And the students haven't gotten any academic credit yet. And when they come back in January, February, they start analyzing their data. And so they've now got, you know, a few months of data before they, you know, before the semester even starts. Assuming we have semesters moving forward with face-to-face teaching and everything else. Yeah, and for summer research, we set them up in finals week and let them run until the students come back in June. So that's a long answer to your question there. Any other questions kicking around there?
I got one asking if you ever get snakes on the cameras.
Haven't gotten a single snake, but I am aware that farther south people do regularly get snakes on the cameras, and the snakes do trigger the cameras. You know, the only thing I've seen on our site, I've seen garter snakes. Now there are certainly other species there, but the garter snakes are the most common, and I'm not really seeing that that they're triggering our cameras. So no snakes yet.
And I think it would be really interesting to maybe think about some collaboration between your students and the Nature Center or some of the Master Naturalist cohorts, and see if we could do kind of a dispersed kind of citizen science project around people putting up game cameras in certain ways with certain protocols. that your students could manage. It'd be fun to, because I know a lot of folks in our community would really be eager to contribute to some scientific questions
Yeah.
with their cameras.
No, I think that's an intriguing idea. And what we did, we took the techniques that eMammal shared. We took their techniques and emulated them. But moving forward, I've been chatting with Vermont Fish and Wildlife, and they have a specific protocol that they use, and I may be adopting their techniques so that we're comparable within Vermont. I think that would be valuable moving forward. But yeah, no, I think that's a really good idea. It wouldn't take much to put together a simple set of protocols that people could follow. We encourage the students to when I say encourage, I mean require as part of their grade. We have them put some of their images up, representative images, on iNaturalist. So we're adding to the iNaturalist data set. Like I said, mammals are harder to get into iNaturalist in terms of people just aren't getting good photographs of mammals. So when you've got some, it's just really valuable to get them on up there. So yeah.
Well, Declan, I want to thank you again for sharing your experience with us this evening. I will somehow get the recording of this up onto our website, into our usual spot in our MBNC online page, and I will add hyperlinks to those resources that you included in those slides as well. And if anybody has any additional questions, now's a good time to ask them, or you can email them to me or to Declan, and we'll be back in touch with you.
Sounds good. Thanks everyone for coming. It was a good time. Fun.
Thank you, Declan, and thank you, Sean. Really, really great program.
Let's see who's left. Okay, there is Catherine still there.
Thanks, guys. That was great.
Hey, thanks for coming.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, I'm going to stop recording here.